So first I'm going to show you 3.12 balanced spinal curves. We know that the spine naturally has secondary and primary curves. It starts so that your neck forms a secondary curve, your cervical spine, your thoracic goes into a primary curve and then goes down to your lumbar into another secondary curve, and then your sacrum to a primary curve. And so what I want to do, what this exercise helps anyone do, is get a balanced length in all of the curves, because, as it says here, if one of them is too exaggerated, then the rest of the curves will suffer, which is kind of what's happening with me, that I always exaggerate, or it's a habit for me to exaggerate my lumbar curve. So, this is getting a lot of tension, a lot of pain, and then goes into my hips and my sacrum. And you can't really dance like that. You can't balance. So what I want to do, it tells you to visualize the curves as a harmonious wave, so that they're constantly in motion with your limbs, and it shows at the neck that the imaginary spine, or it continues up, shown in this picture here, so that if it were to continue, this would be another primary curve up into our skull. And so we want to really visualize each curve and know that they should always be released, so that the natural curve, they can balance each other out, and that they don't become exaggerated in any way. Yeah, so that's what I'm really trying to think about, and what I would try to do before each class, so that when I move, I'm not really stuck in one curve, stuck with tension. And so we're thinking of the downward phase of a plie. Imagine all the spinal curves deepening just slightly, not too much, otherwise you don't want to go back into that. So when I plie, I think of the limbs going away from me, but keeping my spine released, so that the natural curves are still present, and I'm not exaggerating anything. And then that's in the down phase of the plie. I'm thinking of the continuation of this imaginary length of the spine, keeping the curves naturally present, and then trying not to go back and lock my knees, otherwise I'll go back to this tension in my lumbar curve. And then in the up phase, I'm thinking of dropping the spinous processes down, so my pelvis is released. They're in constant dynamic change in response to limb action. So they're not rigid. When my legs are moving, they're in release, so that they can easily adjust themselves. My spine can adjust to where it needs to be to keep the natural curve in my movement. And then it's to perform a balance with a natural, fabulously balanced dynamic spine. I'm a little off. But this would be an exercise that I am including in my warm-up before classes, so that I can really get the natural curves and release in my spine. Try not to hold any tension before class, so that I can get that in my body, what it feels like, and hopefully maintain that throughout my movement in general. That was 3.2 balanced spinal curves.